Ahoy, this is Onkel Neal. With me today is Dan Dimitrescu. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm glad to talk to you again, Neil.
I know, it's been a while.
It has too long, I think.
So, I think the last time we talked, or at least we met in person, was in Kiel.
Yes, it is.
2017,
Good.
that was when the devs and I went to visit the U995 to do a tour of it, and you joined us there.
Yeah, it was my second time, I think, visiting that U-boat. It was very cool.
Yeah.
We also got to be on the upper bridge, I think, and on the deck. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Right.
We got a special tour by one of the members of the German Navy.
Yeah, Patrick.
Yep, good old Patrick. So
Yeah, that was very cool.
let's go back. The first time we met probably was in San Francisco for a PR event for Silent Hunter 4. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it.
Was that your
Um,
first international PR event?
Yes, it was. And it was my first time in the United States. Actually, funny story is that everything was kind of arranged, and when I, bothered to ask, the people that were arranging all this, like, do I need a visa for the United States? And oh yeah, and we had to delay, postpone it for one day, I think. So we all pulled the strings to go to the embassy, get a visa, and catch a later flight. So surprisingly, I think we delayed just for one day.
Okay, well, that's not bad. So do you recall that event?
Oh yes, I do. I remember meeting you and Elvin from Ubisoft.
I know this is the training warhead on the torpedoes.
Oh,
so
it's the
going to
second
be
one.
changed.
Oh, it's a training warhead?
Yeah, it's the yellow warhead.
You sent me to see with training warhead?
Yeah. Well, we didn't want to.
Gonna put that on
waste
song.
warhead.
Probably going to do that anyway.
It was very cool. I remember we went around San Francisco, which is very interesting for me, and also visiting the Pampanito. I think, unfortunately, we didn't also visit. There's a Liberty ship that was moored right behind the Pampanito, but the fleet boat in itself was very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
And it got us the chance to compare what we had in our game, the command room and the submarine in general, with what was there in the actual world. It gives you a certain sense of scale and perspective on, how would the boat floats above the water, and what's the perspective of the captain or the crew from that point.
Okay.
Interesting. And if you think about the U995 in Kiel, being that U-boat is actually a museum on land, it's not exactly the same experience, because the Pampanito was actually rocking on the, on the
water,
waves in
yeah.
the harbor.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not used to that, man.
Yeah, don't tell anybody, but I every time I've gone offshore fishing, I always get seasick. So I'm pretty sure it'd be the same if I was in a submarine.
Yeah, so your secret is safe with me.
Okay, good.
I read about submarines avoiding storms by, going underwater, but this presenting a problem in the early days of submarines, being World War II, I mean, due to the limited endurance that they would have in the deep.
Yep. Yeah, I
So,
imagine
yeah.
they did at some point have to surface if the storm lasted long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Pampanito is a very well kept boat. The Pampanita and the Bowfin are and the Cod are three of the very best World War II subs. Kavala, you got to visit us at a SUBSIM meet in 2008.
We didn't get to visit it because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
I can't remember which hurricane it was, but you remember
Hurricane
it hit
Ike,
yeah. So we took part of helping clean up a little bit the area, but of course we couldn't visit it back then.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Cavala's in pretty good shape now. The group that's been taking care of her have improved her a lot.
Oh, very cool. Well, next time I'm in Texas, I'm definitely gonna visit that. And I think there's a destroyer escort, which is part of the same visiting area, the Stewart, or?
Yep, exactly right. The Stewart, the destroyer escort.
Okay, yeah. So my memory is not completely bad.
Nope, I think you're on top of it.
Yeah, we did visit the USS Texas, which is immensely cool. It was very, very cool, and I'm following it through the years. I see now that it's the Texas is in a dry dock for maintenance right now, isn't
That's
it?
right, it is. And the funniest thing, and this is probably typical Texas, but we don't really know where she's going to go when she's ready. I mean, we know she's not going back to her original berth, San Jacinto, and
Yeah.
she's got to go somewhere. But they already started the dry dock and the overhaul without actually having a destination in mind. So that's going to be interesting.
Same.
I might be able to get them to put her up in my backyard.
That would be very, very cool.
You bet it would. You get free admission too, Dan, anytime.
Yeah. Make it like the SUBSIM Motel. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go with Silent Hunter 4 because, as I said earlier, that's where you and I first got to meet and form a friendship. And we both have a passion and a love for really good simulations. Silent Hunter 4, I was really excited because Silent Hunter 3 was such a big change in the submarine game. I can remember so clearly talking to Sean Stork and the other guys working on Silent Hunter 2 and Carl Norman and asking about, NCPs that would be in the control room or having a 3D control room. And they kind of said, what, are you crazy? This is a submarine game. We don't have resources for that. That's crazy. And
yeah.
Silent Hunter 3, it pushed the boundaries, but Silent Hunter 4 was even a bigger step. When that came out, how much of the code base from Silent Hunter 3 do you guys use in Silent Hunter 4?
I think we used much of it. I mean, the story is that the team from Silent Hunter 3 was broken afterwards because it was probably much of the top devs in Ubisoft Romania. So they were needed for other projects that would become, the flagship projects of the studio.
Right.
So and then I can't remember the exact thinking behind it, but we got approved to do Silent Hunter 4, and we had, I think, less than a year to do it.
Wow.
So yeah, so we had to use as much as possible, but even when we started, we established that because we're moving to a new theater of operation, it's feasible because we can bring something new, but by focusing on the new area, new fleet boats, and work on what makes them special, what is needed, but we can reuse what still works from from Silent Hunter 3.
Sure. And I mean, a lot of it did work, so I mean, it wasn't really a problem.
Yeah. So, for example, if you remember, we took the crew management that we had in Silent Hunter 3, but I think it was in Silent Hunter 4 that we added the watches, the crew watches, I think. So, like a small improvement that also is good for a representation of how these boats work. So it's better in that sense than Silent Hunter 3, but it's not a complete rewrite of the system, like let's say Silent Hunter 5 might have been.
Right.
Well,
I mean, and it really didn't need to be, in my opinion. I think it really achieved what they were going for, which is, set up a submarine game in the Pacific with the different equipment, the different culture, and the different tactical operations, because the Pacific War was quite a bit different from the Atlantic War, and I think Silent Hunter 4 captured that pretty well.
I think it serves to also use the add-on, the what was it called, the U-boat missions, DLC, because that one also built on top of Silent Hunter 4. It was specifically made. I don't think we believe there will be another Silent Hunter done by us in the near. Yeah, exactly. So we thought, okay, we want to help the teams that are working on modding projects. So let's make it easy to add U-boats, and let's also add some other features which were not seen before. That's why you have the campaign with controlling other assets like recon planes or whatever is there. So Silent Hunter 4 should have taken the modding scene over, in our opinion. Of course, that didn't entirely happen because people have their preferences. They already worked a lot on Silent Hunter 3.
Yeah.
Yes, but that was our intention. So I think when you consider Silent Hunter 4 plus the DLC, I think it's a very big step forward from Silent Hunter 3 without breaking everything and building it again,
Right.
which Silent Hunter 5 tried to do.
It obviously proved to be a really good platform for modding because modding is still going strong now 10, 12 years later.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's of course because we didn't, break everything down. It was a much more polished project, I think, than Silent Hunter 3 was done. We got the chance, to iron some stuff down, to maybe redesign them, but within some limits. And having those time limits helps a little bit,
Sure.
just so you don't go too wild about it.
Oh, yeah, so you don't keep the feature creep rolling.
Exactly.
So let me ask you about the famous stopwatch. When that game showed up, I got to play, I got to play a couple beta versions before the press version came out. And when the press version came out, I was writing the review. At some point during the play, I hit the stopwatch key, and here's a stopwatch with the name Stevens, made in Texas. And you can imagine I was standing there looking at that for about 3 minutes thinking, what's going on here? That's my name.
Yeah, obviously, initially, I think we needed to have a watch. I mean, one of the reasons is that it's cool to have a watch in the game. It was period appropriate, and it also served to show that you're using time compression. So on one hand, it's a tool for torpedoes or whatever you need to time, and on another hand, it's useful as a feedback for the actions that you're taking. You're using time compression, time is going forward very fast. Okay, the clock pops up on the screen. So we had a Hamilton watch because for some reason, I can't remember the exact source, but it makes sense as much as I know about the Force and the brands in the United States. They would use something like that. I think maybe it was official issue or just as in Silent Hunter 3, it was a Killhouse chronometer that is used, and I think somebody did obtain an approval from the company to use their logo in the game.
Right.
For Hamilton, I don't think we tried. I think working with corporate attorneys or approval processes sometimes is a bit difficult, and it can take a lot of time. And people maybe just they want to err on the side of caution.
Oh, sure. You don't want to have to go into court later over it.
Yeah, and so sometimes they don't even ask. They don't want to bother. And they do their job by saying it's easier if we don't do it. And obviously, when you're trying to do a historical simulation, sometimes there are questions that you want to answer on the side of historical accuracy, because it's a gain for historical accuracy and for the players that are actually looking forward to that, for a realistic representation on historically accurate representations.
Certainly.
So and of course, it's always a very hard question to say when you've done enough and when it's too little. Is your game 100% representation of reality? No, it never is. But are you enough on that side where people say this is pretty cool, or are you just under it? So any of these small tidbits, like having that aircraft named the way it should be, or having an extra aircraft in the game, or having a watch that says Hamilton on it, and 1 people out of 10 will say, yeah, they did use Hamilton watches. They will.
So now it's 9 players out of 10 are going to say they use Stevens watches.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think they said no, you cannot use, or somebody in our team leadership said you cannot do it, and we got the idea to put Stevens on it, and I think that was it. I mean, we didn't need any approval for that. You just let's put this, and we all thought it was cool. I mean, on our, I was lead designer with Tudor Shirban,
Right.
and above us, let's say it was Emil, the producer for Silent Hunter 4, and he was a little bit on the cut of the same cloth as Florin. I mean, he could take decisions by the seat of the pants when he and evaluate whether they actually need to escalate higher, And for something like this, I mean, okay, what Stevens is it a brand that we need to get an approval for? No, it's one of our friends, and we think it will be a cool surprise for everybody on the SUBSIM and for him, and so it was a very easy decision for us.
Really,
And I
really
think
pleasant.
yeah, I think also something like made in Pasadena or something. It was written on the original Hamilton watches, so that we needed also to put something there, and it made sense.
Well, it was pretty thoughtful of you. I'm still tickled by that. And as you can imagine, my girls, they just thought that was the most amazing thing.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad it clicked with you.
It did. And I think it represented the rest of the submarine SUBSIM community as well.
Yeah, those were good times for the Ubisoft to SUBSIM communication and collaboration. Riding on the tail of Silent Hunter 3, there was a lot of enthusiasm and goodwill on both sides, and the team was also part of it were experienced with this Silent Hunter
Right.
3. So it was an easier project to do, especially if you don't plan to throw everything away.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. So
Well, there
those
was a
are
lot
good
of
times.
goodwill, and I think
Yeah.
always the basis for goodwill between the developer and the community always starts with the developers, the level of effort they put into something, and communication they have with the community. And Silent Hunter 3 and 4 were excellent at that. When I went to E3 in Los Angeles, 2004, I went there specifically to look up the Silent Hunter 3 event, and sure enough, Ubisoft had a pretty sizable display, and Florin Bator, he was a producer, and Tiberius Lazar, he was the lead design. They were at the Silent Hunter 3 booth, and I walked up, and these guys were very attentive and answered all my questions beautifully. I knew they were knowledgeable and enthusiastic about the game.
Yeah. They were very cool. TB was an encyclopedia of both game design and U-boats and World War II and let's say naval warfare.
Yeah.
So he was very much the right person to head the project on the design side. Well, actually, those two were the people that hired me and the other game designers on Silent Hunter 3. I think I joined Ubisoft at the start of 2004, so I was pretty new in the team back then. So I remember myself seeing the first videos that appeared announcing the project, probably in preparation for E3. I believe I was that was happening maybe at the end of the previous year, and I went to do some to take some interview tests and everything with the company, because on my side when I heard they were doing simulations, like historical, realistic simulations in Ubisoft Romania, I just knew I had to be there.
Hell yeah.
So I tried that, even though I was not specifically very knowledgeable or experienced with submarines or U-boats. I did have some knowledge, but not that much. And later I learned how much I didn't know, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, you did have a pretty clear idea of how to make gameplay work.
I think so. I mean, you learn every day, and Ubisoft, my career in Ubisoft was pretty long, and I learned a lot while building those games and how to be a better game designer. Just as I learned at the company that I worked before, and just as I learned afterwards with Killhouse Games.
Yeah.
It was. I remember the enthusiasm of both the team and the people on the net when Silent Hunter 3 was announced. Um, I remember I was back then. I don't think I was reading SUBSIM, but I was a frequent visitor of SimHQ. That was another
Yeah.
website for simulation news and the forum. So I heard about that. Also about, I think the Ubisoft Romania studio had a little hand in bringing one of the Harpoon games to the market. I think they took it over late in the project and maybe did some technical side on it. And for a while they talked about actually doing Harpoon, another one, Harpoon 4 or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think that project actually happened.
No, it never got off the
So
ground.
yeah, that was another interesting subject for me, especially as even though I didn't play with submarines so much. As a kid, I did play Silent Service 2 a lot, but I did play Fleet Commander.
Yeah.
So Harpoons seem to be in the same direction, maybe not necessarily identical, more hardcore, but I knew I liked those kind of games, and it was also very interesting because it brought all the elements of naval warfare and aircraft and strategy, on the screen, which I liked very much.
Sure. Do you remember any of the big decisions or any planning events that took place during building the game? I mean, at some point, I'm sure they had to retool everything for the dynamic campaign.
Yeah. First of all, I think I remember that when I played Silent Hunter 2 a little bit. I can't remember if I played it before hearing about Silent Hunter 3 or just to get an idea of how the project is and what I think should exactly what my opinion of how Silent Hunter 3 should go, because of course being from outside I didn't know everything. And one of the things I thought was that, okay, the 3D crew seems like not really important. Why are they doing that? But okay, whatever. I was probably a very hardcore simulation guy back then, and also coming from Silent Hunter 2, I thought, well, they better do dynamic campaign. I mean, that's the number one thing that they need to have. So when I
Yes.
came over to Ubisoft Romania, of course, it became a subject of discussion, a long discussion, because the initial plan for Silent Hunter 3 included something like a branching campaign.
Yes.
Now, I would say that was one of the brainchilds of Tiberius. So there is a risk that I don't yet fully understand how it was supposed to work, because it was not supposed to be a scripted campaign like Silent Hunter 2. It had some dynamic elements and some freedom of navigation, and my main idea, and there was also one of the programmers who was Mihai Gosa, who was also a very hardcore simulation and strategy player. We both thought that having a dynamic campaign was very important, and we thought that to do the project of the branching campaign with the freedom elements, to do it properly, you're almost doing a dynamic campaign and the effort is there, but it's very hard to keep it under control. And the downside is that you cannot call it, and from the marketing, from the communication point of view, you cannot call it a dynamic campaign,
Right.
which will be a huge problem in discussing with your players who are expecting this kind of feature. I
Yeah.
mean, we all know, yeah,
They'll
how it
grab the
went.
torches.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember discussing in the office a lot. I think while they were at E3 or in another trip, and when they came back, I think TB changed his mind a little bit, and we were able to reach a common ground and focus on doing a dynamic campaign, which proved easier than expected to do. And as we all know, it's one of the defining features of
It sure
Silent
is.
Hunter 3.
It sure is. I
Yeah.
remember talking to Tiberius at E3 about the campaign, and he had described the scripted with the dynamic elements, which is a fair solution. Ultimately, it's almost a point where you have to say and be right about saying we have a dynamic campaign to sell the game to a lot of the players, because for better or for worse, people tend to see things a certain way. And if somebody can say that it's not a dynamic campaign, if it's scripted or planned, a lot of people are just going to close their mind to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this case, Side 103 had a very good campaign. You pretty much started in the bunker or in the port. You had a band playing. You sailed out to sea, and you encountered ships, single ships, convoys, sometimes hunter-killer groups. And it satisfied everybody for a dynamic campaign. I think it was really well done.
Yes. I think it was very well done. I think that's what happens when you have a lot of talented and enthusiastic people that work on a team, are given, the budget, the time, and the freedom to work on the game and put their soul in it. And each of them, comes with a little idea, with a larger idea, does something it's supposed to do, like the harbor, but thinks about it and adds the band and everything. So that was very, very cool, and it was. I think we all rejoiced in what we discovered about what other people in the team have done.
Oh, that's good.
It was one of those projects. Yeah,
that's wonderful. So
okay, cool.
I guess another thing that's on my mind with games like Side 103, some of the old games like Age of Empires, one of my favorites. Somewhere along the line, Microsoft juiced that game up with a new development team and updated some of the graphics. Basically, the game works the same, but it looks current. How feasible would it be for somebody like Side 103 code to take that, build on it, replace some of the models and graphic assets? Is that feasible, or is that something that can't work because the game code is married to the graphics in such a way that you can't really do it without rebuilding the whole game?
I think the issue could be maybe on the tools available to work on new models, and the models are not specific, especially, high-end enough for today's machines and graphic expectations. In theory, that's why we wanted Silent Hunter 5 to use some off-the-shelf tools, but it didn't. In the end, it was not as easy as we hoped it would be.
Okay.
So we used some format from Rad Game Tools, but I can't remember the exact story. But you wouldn't be able to just get an exporter to have your models included in easily in Silent Hunter 5 as we would have hoped.
Sure.
So for Silent Hunter 3 and 4, which uses the old engine, so to speak, it would be even harder.
Okay.
That being said, for me as a developer, as a fellow developer, I mean, I haven't played much of the latest submarine simulations, but I think there is a strong need to support those, like U-boat or Wolfpack, or I think there's a couple more that are supposed to come out. So just going on Silent Hunter 3 and rebuilding that one would be counterproductive, and I'm sure it will get you only as far. I mean, for people that have played it in its glory times and are happy and content with it, it's probably enough as it is, and they don't need a new version. And especially, it's an issue that you cannot just press a button and have a new version that improves the rendering of Silent Hunter 3. I mean, working on just the engine and you have better rendering, and suddenly the game is great and everybody's playing that. I mean, there are countless mods, and whenever you produce a new mega mod, somebody will say, oh yeah, but this one doesn't have those 10 ships that somebody did, and I'm not playing it, or I'm playing it, but I'm feeling that something is left out, so I have to switch between those two versions. I can't decide which is cool. So it kind of fragments even more the community. It's not great. That's why when for Silent Hunter 4 we put the DLC out, the U-boat missions in Silent Hunter 4. We actually gave the DLC for free to all the modders that we thought that have a mod that has traction on SUBSIM, based on on SUBSIM and whatever
Right.
we can find. So on one, we thought those people have worked a lot on our game on Silent Hunter 4, and they deserve a little recognition and a little thank you from
Sure.
us.
That's
Yeah,
appreciated.
and on the other hand, we really thought that we should encourage them to have their mods compatible with the DLC, so that people wouldn't have to choose between playing with the DLC or playing with the mod, which improves the experience in some way. So they can have it. They can have both at the same time.
So that's
So
very
it leads to,
accommodating.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So
So
the goal for Silent Hunter 5, I suppose, was Silent Hunter 3, but with better graphics and maybe improved in some areas of the game. But at first, it was a pretty exciting project, and there's no doubt that the graphics were amazing. But I had a different sense of how that was going as compared to 3 and 4.
it was a more difficult project. One, maybe we tried to do too much, and many in the team, including, in a sense, myself, were not experienced enough. Maybe I was not good enough to lead as a designer a project that, so maybe I didn't focus on the right decisions, didn't change course to adapt when things proved too difficult or were needed. Also, the way it worked, the chemistry in the team, I'd say, was not necessarily the best.
Yeah.
Also, consider that Silent Hunter 3 and 4 were built on the same engine by the best team, I'd say, in Ubisoft Romania. At least Silent Hunter 3. Silent Hunter 4 more with a smaller team, but it didn't try to do as much. And given that Silent Hunter 3 was a recent project, they could pull for advice from the old hats, the programmers of Silent Hunter 4 or Silent Hunter 3. They could go and hey, how did you do this? How do I add this? If they needed any any advice or guidance.
Sure. You had
So
resources right at hand for that.
exactly. For Silent Hunter 5, people have already moved on, maybe departed the company, maybe things were a little cloudy already, things were being anyway thrown away, so we build it right this time, improve it. Also, maybe there were some decisions like the famous, always online that were not the best, and affected the project or the project's visibility and impact on the players in not the right way.
Yeah.
Again, I could say, I mean, when I'm maybe drunk or asleep or whatever, I can point fingers at decisions or people or whatever. But in truth is that, in a sense, I was the most experienced guy in a power position in with Silent Hunter 5, and I should have done better, and I guess I didn't.
Well, I don't think there's any reason for you to fall on your sword over it. I think
I'm not, but that's the reality.
because I don't know. That's pretty gracious of you to put it that way. But I didn't seem to have the problem when I was communicating with you. But when I had the producer on the line, he was always kind of cagey about everything and hesitant to discuss it. I just got a different feel of the relationship, and I don't think it was based on you.
Yeah, he was a new guy. He had risen from being lead lead programmer. He was very ambitious, and on the other hand, I guess, he was more into the being the producer position than and making sure he does that part in the corporation. Then he was actually knowledgeable about the brand, our values, and so communication and decisions maybe were inside the team. Talking to him were maybe not the best. And again, I think if I was better at it, I could probably help him. Help us.
Right. No, I
You know?
understand.
Yeah.
And if I'd have known, if I'd have been smarter and I'd have known that this was going to be the final Silent Hunter series other than Silent Hunter Online, I probably would have flown to Bucharest and rented a bed and breakfast and stayed there and sweep the floors of the offices if I had to help. But
That would
the
have
game
been
came
fun.
out. The game came out, and it didn't give the same, I guess, overall feel. I mean, there are a lot of critics. I was a critic of it. Maybe I was an undue critic. I remember there were a couple aspects of it now looking back. I probably should have said, yeah, that's okay. For example, you didn't start off with different U-boats. You started off with just a Type 7, and you had a specific period of the war that you were in, which now that I'm involved with Wolfpack, that's exactly what we've done for very good reasons. I wasn't as forgiving about somebody else's game as I was mine. Once it was out, once it was selling, I think they released 1 or 2 patches, and that was the big contingent for me, was if the game continued getting the attention that we felt it needed to polish out some of the rough spots, I mean, we would be all happy about that. My memory of it was the game pretty much was left out there and didn't get a lot of extra additional work.
Yeah, I think that is kind of correct. I think more patches were needed. When we started Silent Hunter 3, I think the intention was to do at least
you mean 5?
Type 7 and Type 9.
You mean
Silent Hunter
5?
5, yeah. Sorry, yeah. So we wanted to do Type 7 boats and I think Type 9 boats and maybe also Type 21s. I don't remember exactly, but it's very hard to decide specifically to build a project that is less in scope than the previous one.
Sure.
It's a very hard starting point in communication.
Yeah. Well, I understand it better now. I mean, it's when you have a game like Silent Hunter 5 and that the U-boat is such a built-out thing. It's not just a 3D view where you're static. Changing that to a Type 9 is almost like doing the whole thing over again. It's not as easy as it was with 3 or 4 to add different boats.
So, again, we really didn't want to go lower in scope of the game. But then there's a question of having time to do it, and especially if the project is not going well, there is less willpower to push for it, and when your requests are denied or you cannot do it, and maybe sometimes you think these will be added later, like a DLC and everything, but that one depends very much on sales.
Oh yeah,
so,
it always depends on sales.
Yeah. So unfortunately, even though we thought that okay, but the game is more moddable, so people would be able to add it, or a DLC will come. I don't think ever happened.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that happens. The modding community's done a pretty good job of picking up the ball and going with it. So it's amazing to me that Silent Hunter 3, 4, and 5, they're really old games, but they're still very, very popular with the sim community. I mean, can you imagine the game U-Boat, for example, or Destroyer U-Boat Hunter? People are playing it actively in the year 2035?
I think they will.
I do too. So in 2011, you left Ubisoft and formed your own company, Killhouse Games, with Mihai Gosa. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult decision to walk away from a job to start your own company?
Well, just for historical accuracy, there's 2 items. One of them is that I didn't directly go to Killhouse Games. First, I detoured to City Interactive Romania. City Interactive, the guys with Sniper Ghost Warrior, opened a studio here, and a lot of our friends, including an artist, great artist from Silent Hunter 5, moved there. So I tried that, but then they shut down most of the studio. The project that they were building didn't really work so much. And I think at that point I was already pretty decided on Killhouse Games, and Mihai was also. There was another programmer that started Killhouse Games with us, but he's no longer with the company, Cătălin Saitan. So it was the 3 of us that back in Ubisoft days started this. We were colleagues in Silent Hunter 5. Both of them were actually coming from another Ubisoft studio, still in Romania, but it's a city which is famous for programming and programmer school, university, Craiova, and they were let's say maybe junior in time inside Ubisoft, but very experienced and enthusiastic, and especially Mihai was a very driven, and he still is. He's very driven, very active, and very proactive in developing, working, doing everything that is needed. And I'd say in Silent Hunter 5, he was probably the most enthusiastic and hardworking guy after me. he was of course on a different job, but given that he was a junior in a way in a team, I mean he was a new guy in the team, and not a junior in the sense of junior programmer.
Yeah.
That was very let's say unusual.
Well, that's the kind of guy
So
you want to start a company with for sure.
definitely. So I think we recognized each other on that level, and after Silent Hunter 5, I kept working and being assigned on different projects in Ubisoft Romania, but I didn't really feel that my place was there on my side, and that my ideas were really useful, that I was contributing as much as I'd like. So I thought that I would be able to work better on something else, and I'm ready to um, try my having my own ideas as opposed to helping shape other people's ideas
Sure.
in a project.
And Killhouse, the first game was Doorkickers. That's a game that you had a concept. You had a concept for
Yeah.
that for quite a while, right?
Yeah, in 2011 we came up with the idea for Doorkickers. We sat on it a bit until late 2012, and then we worked a couple of months on it and starting putting it out for people to buy, play, support us, and that was it. And it was released on Steam in early access in 2013,
Yeah.
and as a full game, let's say in 2014.
And boy, did it sell.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. We're pretty proud of it.
I believe
And
I don't blame you. I enjoyed it. I got another Easter egg in the game that I was very touched by. My father, you asked us to send a picture of my father when he was a young man. You know, at the time the game came out, I showed it to him. He was like 74, 75. So computer games were not his forte. And he just marveled at that. He thought that was so cool. And he always had good things to say about you.
yeah, I remember meeting Abe. I think your father's name Abe
Yep.
Stevens, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember meeting both your parents in Texas in 2008, I believe.
Right.
They were very cool, and I like meeting Abe, and it was very cool for us to do that. I think Val gave us the picture, so it was also meant as a surprise for you.
Oh,
I
that was
think.
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, so Valerie, my daughter,
Yes, I think we wanted to have this. Well, I remember you being a contributor for Doorkickers, and you might remember we had like a tiered, like Kickstarter, like
rewards.
tiered rewards, yeah. And you being a friend and a long-time supporter and somebody we knew, I think you decided to contribute more than the average, and you were one of those top tiers contributor, and without actually, I believe, expecting anything extra except to help some friends. But we wanted to get something back to you, so we came up with the idea to do Abe in the
Yeah,
game, and
right.
so I talked to Val, which obviously when I've been to Texas, I got to know your girls,
Yeah.
so it was easy for me to obtain the source material to have Abe in the game,
Well, that's
and
pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I
Uh,
mean, well, it's always important to help a friend with the game, but it's even more important to help a friend that has a good game with the game.
Thank you. Yeah, it helped immensely.
One of the things I attributed to the success of Doorkickers, then the concept was pretty original and it was very, very functional. It worked the way it's supposed to, but I always got a sense that you were really a tireless promoter of the game. You gave interviews, you kept updates posted on Facebook and on your website, and it kind of drew me into the game even more than if I'd have just had an association with people making the game. It kept it on my forefront of my consciousness a lot. And marketing's a very big part of any game success, but I think you did a pretty good job on that.
Well, thank you. I think we did all right. It's very hard, indeed, as an indie developer, to market your game, to have your game unknown, game getting it known. I think many people work on games which are extraordinary, maybe very good, but if people don't find out about them, don't get excited when hearing about them, the game will maybe die in obscurity. So that's a very serious danger for an indie developer.
Sure.
So of course, for us it was not just our game and the game we spent some years to build, but it was also a project we cared very much about. We knew very well. We knew the subject very well. We believed in it, that it was a very cool and playable game, and it was fun to play. And so it was very easy to market it. And also, again, we are very driven here at Killhouse Games and very proactive in working on the game, marketing it, as you said. So we were also very active online to do it, like 24/7.
Yeah. Well,
Let's say. Yeah.
I had a big impression of that. I mean, that's the way it looked to me.
And I remember when we were not already out on the market, and maybe there were still doubts on our side whether and it always is before launching a game. Nobody knew about our game, so I went. We knew I had something special, so I went to the places where people knew me already. So that meant on SUBSIM and on SIM
Yeah.
And I posted about the game, and especially on SUBSIM, people were really, really enthusiastic. Again, because I think people appreciated me over there just as much as I appreciate them. But also because, as I correctly anticipated, it was not necessarily far from their gaming interests.
That's
so
correct.
I was not selling them a game that was something completely different.
Yep.
But something that, yeah.
Yeah, you weren't trying to sell. You weren't trying to sell tools to a makeup convention.
Exactly. Yeah. So the initial enthusiasm that we encountered there and the feedback we got from players helped us, push forward, knowing that there is a market for us there, that people like what we see, even though it was just some screenshots from our dev version. They didn't get to play the game. Yeah, and some of those people actually went and bought our game and supported us, and so that one was really, really cool. And of course, I remember you helping push our news forward to your community whenever it happened, as much as it was appropriate, of course.
Sure, but like I say, if it's a pretty good game concept, it's not very far outside. Well, it's not outside the realm of what these guys were interested in anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So you were very successful with the game. You gained a large group of players who enjoyed it. The reviews were supportive. And then you guys started working on Action Squad, sort of the follow-up to it. That's about the time we met in Kiel in 2017, and the Wolfpack developers, Oscar and Einar, we toured the U995 and spent some time together. The devs were really interested in everything you had to say about their game development, Wolfpack.
Yeah, I don't remember if I played Wolfpack back then. It was already out when we toured.
Toured U995? Well, it was the Moroccan demo was the only thing that was out.
Okay.
So Wolfpack, we didn't actually get anything out for about 3 years after that. We were working on it. The Moroccan demo was like a Swedish simplified submarine action game. That's what they, pitched to me as far as, was I interested in it, just from a reviewer standpoint. And what I really enjoyed about their game and the concept that they had come on that I had thought about for a long time was more of a hands-on procedural approach to a game, to where if you go to periscope depth, you have to manage valves, manage vents, things like that, as opposed to just pushing P for periscope depth. And Oscar already had that concept in his game. You had to turn levers, and you had a really, at the time, a pretty good TDC and statometer in the game. So I knew Oscar and Einar were the kind of guys that would really be devoted and diligent about making a game that was high fidelity.
It was very cool to visit the U-boat with people that already knew so much. That's obviously normally when you're an enthusiast and you go to a museum or something like this, you're the nerd, and you run the risk of boring everybody else with your stories. And so this was very different. And it was also very interesting because I was no longer the dev, to talk to, because um, I was no longer a U-boat simulation guy. Those other guys were. I was curious about them, but in a sense, it was also interesting to see uh, different points of view of the same thing we are visiting.
Right.
Also, because of Patrick and the other U-boat guys that were there, we got a completely different perspective of things. Um, Whenever we visit one of those U-boats or ships, it's a hands-on experience that you cannot get otherwise. Even if you think about, okay, how much can you see above the wall of the conning tower in a U-boat? Oh, so you need to put your feet on this, or you grab this handle and climb out. It's very interesting. And for example, I always thought that it's jumping through those hatches as they do in Das Boot is not as easy for an untrained person as they make it look. And I appreciate the visit to the design of the Pampanito and the American fleet boats, and the space and the comfort. In a way, I appreciate it more once you get inside the U-boat. It's not that the U-boat is so cramped when you are one person visiting. You
Sure.
have to think about it, how it would be with 50 people on board.
Yeah.
But there's more space and different kind of doors, and there's more comfort even in the day-to-day movement around there. That was interesting, and it's also interesting to check on. I remember during Silent Hunter 5 times, we had, even back then we had questions of how things worked during reloads, or bringing torpedoes from the top deck to the torpedo room, or were they able to reload more than one torpedo tube at a time? Uh, this kind of questions always come, and museum ship can provide part of the answer, because of course some of them don't have all the gear in place, so that
They've
it
been
can be
modified.
misleading. Yeah. Uh, Also, you can watch movies or documentaries or period footage filmed during the war, and you get an idea. But so in the end, you as a historical researcher, or as a game developer, as a game designer, try to put everything together, see if it makes sense for you, think if it makes sense as a game design, as a fun game, and you arrive at your own version of what reality will take as a form in your game.
Sure.
Because 100% real, unfortunately, it cannot be. You're always subjective in the way you understand things, even if you want it to be 100%. And which, of course, I applaud everybody that tries. And I don't want to be to use it as an excuse. Oh, because some people sometimes say you can never be 100% historical accurate, so don't even try. No, you try it, and be reasonable, but
Sure.
also be honest about it.
Yeah.
No,
No, that makes sense.
yeah,
You always try to you shoot for it, but you may pair off parts of the realistic that don't make a good game. So you get a balance. You get a realistic game that's reasonable, and the player can get a lot of enjoyment out of it, because there's not going to be a lot of people that are interested in just a pure simulation that doesn't have good gameplay activity.
yeah. And there are things that, even though they are not entirely realistic or not realistic at all, they can make in the end the game more playable or the experience better. I always use this example that I would play. In my youth, I used to be a very hardcore simulation player, especially flight simulations. But I tried everything that I could. Of course, in my youth, hardcore flight simulations were maybe not as hardcore as flight simulations today. There was still a focus also on playability, on also I think on atmosphere, on and on uh, how well the environment and battle felt, not just on the switchology, so to speak. Uh, so as when you look at my career as a simulation developer or also game designer, I think it helps to understand I grew up playing games like the old Microprose titles, so grew up with Silent Service 2, which picks up parts of that you can probably see in Silent Hunter 4. I played Team Apache, I played Gunship 2000, I played F-19, F-15, Strike Eagle 2, what is called 117,
Oh yeah.
the old dogfight game, Red Baron, Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe, Aces of the Pacific, Aces over Europe, and of course, especially Falcon 3 and Falcon 4.
Yeah.
So all these games and many others, of course, shaped me as a game designer, and I kind of turn back towards them when I think of what the perfect experience is. Maybe more than on games of today's, which I think improve the pure simulation experience very much, but maybe don't improve the game experience, the playing experience as proportionally as much, or maybe detract from it. So I always use the example of the old game. It's called, I think, Theater of War. It's a game built by the Isle to Sturmovik guys, which is I'd say somewhere between tank simulation and tank tactics game. Pretty hardcore with terrain and everything built as at the same standard as it would be Isle 2. So a hardcore simulation, you just don't control the tank directly. You have like a squad, you build your squad of tanks and you um, work around the level trying to fight your mission. So I played multiplayer with one of the Silent Hunter 5 artists, Bogdan Petrashku, who's a great artist, and much of what is in that game is his work. And he was a 3D modeler, and he was a very hardcore simulation player also, and enthusiastic about it. And we would play, and it was an interesting experience trying to get your tanks in, turret down and hull down and do ambushes and everything. But it was also very, very hard to set up a game, and to get to the point where you have fun. And there were other games that maybe took compromises from the pure simulation experience, or didn't even try. So, for example, we played. It's a World War II RTS game. It's called Company of Heroes, which
Oh yeah.
doesn't
I
try to
remember
be
that one.
realistic, yeah, or at least not that realistic. But I think I played hundreds of matches, and there would be like 6 of us playing in the office or 8 of us playing in the office, and we would use suppression and flanking and paratrooper drops and ambushes and all sorts of realistic concepts. And we had much more of we played much more of that than we would play Theater of War, purely because it was easier to get everybody to play that game. It's easier to set up a match, easier to set up an interesting match than just something which was pure simulation.
Sure, sure. And I
So
mean, it's all based on the F word, fun. If it's fun, if you're enjoying it, it's great to have it propped up with a lot of realism, or framed with a lot of realism. But if it's not fun, it's just not going to be something you're going to spend much time on.
true. Also, actually, in 2016, after Doorkickers, we did start working on Doorkickers 2, but it was harder at the start. Probably for the same reasons that Silent Hunter 5 was a little bit hard or not optimal. When you're trying to do a sequel that turns every stone, does everything right,
Right.
improves everything. Maybe you try more, and it makes for a very difficult start of a project.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
ambitious.
yeah, so we were working on that, and we just took a part-time detour with Action Squad, which is on most of the programming side was actually developed by a partner of ours, Pixel Shard, who was building an engine for a side scroller, a pixelated side scroller, something very old school, and we proposed to him again through the mindset that an indie project who should have a lot of personality and something memorable, so it doesn't, die in obscurity, so to speak. So we proposed to him that he should do the pixelated side-scroller version of Doorkickers, and
Yeah.
we thought it would be a fun idea. Of course, we grew up playing those kinds of games on early PCs or on Spectrum computers. So we proposed that, and he agreed. In the end, we did much of a design and level design work. It was very fun project, and we liked it a lot. But we were also working on Doorkickers 2 at the time.
Yeah. And Doorkickers too. Now that's out and that's been selling pretty well.
Yeah, it's definitely our most successful project to date. But it's not out of early access yet. So if people wanna check it out again, they can. And it's a very fun, and we think it's in a great shape. But it's not fully out yet. There's
Okay.
more
But it
stuff to
is
be done
available
for
for
it.
people to buy and play in early access.
Oh yes,
Yeah, so
definitely.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely include a link in the description below. And anybody that's listening to this interview, I suggest you take a look at it and see. I think you'll enjoy a game like that. All right, Dan. Is there anything else that you want to cover? Anything else that's on your mind?
It was there's something that I wanted to mention, that for Silent Hunter 4, since we're speaking about visiting the Pampanito, and you mentioned the Bowfin and the USS Cod. We spoke about Silent Hunter 4 earlier, and you mentioned visiting the Pampanito together, and we discussed that. It was very interesting, and visiting U-boats and fleet boats and museum ships in general. And you mentioned the Bowfin and the USS Cod as being very well maintained boats. And the thing is, I can't remember exactly how we got in contact with the USS Cod, but we were really in email communication with them, even though we didn't visit uh, the the fleet boat.
That was
And
Paul Ferros, right?
I think maybe.
Yeah, Paul
So we
Ferros is the
talked.
COD guy.
Yeah, so through we got to Mr. John Fakan, who was one of their I uh, the people there, and historical researchers, I believe, and he even helped us with by writing, I think, some of the historical messages that pop up in Silent Hunter 4
Nice.
from the archives of new of the historical messages that would
Actually were sent.
showcase the ongoing war
Yeah.
um, during in the Pacific back in the day. So again, I mentioned playing Silent Service 2, and one of the things that always stuck with me is how when patrolling in Silent Service 2, um, you would get those little pop-ups on the map like beeps, and then a text box that says, "Oh, ComSubPack regrets to inform you that Wake Island has fallen to the Japanese," and a little bit more.
Sure.
Or yeah, so in in Silent Service 2, we got the I think again from the code guys, we got the actual format of the text in the paper format of the messages, how they would get from the radio transmitter. They would be using this form to write everything down, and the captain or XO or whatever, everybody would have to sign. Um, so we understood a little bit about how they were formatted, how they were printed there, and we put that in the game. And it made sense to have more communication for that feature, and it also helped put everything in context. And
Yeah,
if we
certainly.
had like more dynamic campaign events, it would work even more. But again, the USS Code helped guys, and Dr. John Fakan helped us write a lot of those, and it was a great collaboration. I think he passed away a couple of years ago, though.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the people involved with the World War II submarines are getting up in years. I'm no spring chicken myself. Well, Dan, what's next for you and your team?
Well, we're still doing Silent Hunter, Doorkickers 2. Sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, Afterwards, probably a long break. Uh, but no, I mean, I think Doorkickers 2 is one of those projects that you can build, and it's meant to be built on top of it a lot. So, new units, new missions, a more involved campaign mode, maybe than what we have in plan right now for the full release.
Nice.
Um, and even though it has modding support already, I mean, people have done something like 4,000 or more missions for it already. It's in the Steam Workshop. Um, we will enable full modding support, but
Yeah.
also maybe we release the source code, at least we plan for, so that more complex mods are possible. They will be able to improve the game and add more on that side. And on our side, of course, we can add new units, maybe more complex additions than it would be possible for the regular modder. Because, in general, even when you look at Silent Hunter series, most of the modders are able to add content that is similar and similar to what is already put out by the official devs.
Right.
So you would have more ships in Silent Hunter. You would have more missions, better missions, more detailed ships. They can add a lot of scope to the game. They can add a lot of imaginations. But there are points where they would hit, bottlenecks or things that they just can't implement or add.
Yes,
So
there are
that's where
limits.
exactly. So, for example, if you would have to add a new periscope or a new radar that is supposed to work in a different way, and when we designed the system behind it, we didn't think about it or didn't know about it, then that would be an obstacle for them. So, in theory, we could add more of that kind of content, and it's our duty to do it. So if you look at Doorkickers 2, for example, we have right now three playable units, or let's say squads in the game. So the player is able to play the U.S. Army Rangers, who are like light infantry, special operations, doing door kicking. We have riflemen or assaulters, as we call them in the game, grenadiers. They have machine gunners that can lay down suppressive fire. They have marksmen who they have very high kill probability in the long range. But in a sense, they're, let's say, the door kickers experience to move to a fictional Middle East country and with military instead of police units. So some changes along that way. They can blow up walls and do all sorts of stuff like that. Then you have the CIA guys who are, yeah, smaller squads. They can go undercover, disguise themselves, hide their weapons under blankets, all sorts of stuff, and we plan to add more to shape them more toward the intended CIA experience.
Yeah, more
And
clandestine.
in the end, we have the local SWAT, like somewhere between citizen militia and official or unofficial SWAT from the Middle Eastern country. So
Yeah.
they are more like people that are fighting for their own country, are trying to bring peace to their own country. They are allied and supported by the U.S. Army, but they are using different weapons. They have different concepts and abilities. They are able to also use regular militia guys who don't cost as much to deploy, so they can bring more people to the table than the Rangers guys. So if we add another unit, it shouldn't be just oh, okay, a different variation of militia that has different skins and different weapons. Also something that brings new gameplay to the table.
Right. Yeah, completely different aspect and flavor.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. I appreciate your time, Dan. I hope we talk again before you guys become part of the Russian Empire.
That's not gonna happen, man.
That's what I like to hear. Call me. I can still carry a rifle. If you guys need help, I'll be part of your militia. So I really appreciate your time, Dan, and As a friend, thank you, but as a fan of submarine games, I really want to say thank you for all you've done and your team and the guys you've worked with in the past have done to keep submarine games going.
Oh, thank you so much. Working on with Ubisoft and on Silent Hunter was a life-changing period for me, and I was honored to be part of those teams. I worked with some great guys, some which were much better than me, and helped me become who I am today. And also working and being part of the Silent Hunter and SUBSIM communities was very important for me and always will be. And
Yeah.
also meeting you and being your friend is something I'll always be, so to speak.
Excellent.
Thank you for all your support and for this interview. I don't think I'll do another Silent Hunter or submarine simulation, but that's also especially because I think there are other people that are doing some very interesting projects these days, including Wolfpack, of course.
Yeah,
So
that's my goal for 2023 is to get you in the game of Wolfpack.
I have the Wolfpack, so.
No, I mean I want to play with you. Me and you, and
Oh,
maybe
okay.
the two devs. We can make an all-star celebrity Wolfpack cruise and see if
That
we can
would be
avoid
cool.
sinking ourselves.
Yeah, we
Well,
should definitely do that.
have a good Christmas. Tell Gabby I said hi and kiss those little girls for me. I have one last
Oh,
thing I need
thank
you
you.
to do. Look at your screen.
Okay, so in closing, be more aggressive.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. All right, this is Uncle Neal signing off. Good hunting, and don't
Thank you.
forget to close the hatch.
Okay, I will.